I'm John Rodgers from Cuyahoga Falls, and this time we're going down to my old hometown of Charleston, South Carolina. But we're not just going to cover Charleston, we're going to go out into the low country. And I have a short script to open this. It was only a single shell bursting in the air, but it signaled the beginning of the great American tragedy, the Civil War. The scene was Fort Sumter, lying in the harbor of Charleston, South Carolina, and that's the fort you're looking at. The time was 4:30 a.m., just before dawn, on April the 12th, 1861. History even then was no stranger to this low country area, and Charleston today still claims the title of America's most historic city. And that's the spire of St. Michael's, and you will see that several times. The Charleston of today and the beginning Charlestown aren't even in the same place. Charlestown, founded in 1670, was on the west bank of the Ashley River. The relocation of the city to the peninsula was done only 10 years later. The Charles was in honor of King Charles II of England. And Fort Sumter was not yet a vision. The shoal on which it would later be built was completely covered by high tide. Now the old Charlestown, this is the Ashley River, the old Charlestown was down this side, out of the picture, but over on that side of the Ashley River. Look at a map of the area, and you'll get an overall view of the setting where so many events were etched into history. This is the old Charleston, the historic Charleston on the peninsula. This is the Ashley River. This is the Cooper River. This is the harbor here, and the ships have to come in through a very narrow passageway into here. Fort Sumter lies here. These are what are called barrier beaches. This is Folly. This is Morris Island across here. Morris Island was split by one of the inlets years ago. And there are inlets here, and all of this area is marshy. And this, we call these sounds, and this is where you get the good shrimp, the creek shrimp, we call them. This is James Island, and I was born and raised on James Island. And this is Fort Johnson. It was a battery of Fort Johnson that fired the first shot of the Civil War. Over on this side is old Fort Sullivan, which is today called Fort Moultrie. It was called Fort Sullivan during the Revolutionary War. And when we look at the aircraft carrier, and just sort of keep that in the back of your mind, we will be looking right in this area called Patriots Point. Now, before we get started into this next paragraph, I want to show you this. This is a slave bill of sale. And this was for a Negro female slave named Betty, warranted sound. And a piece of paper like that, together with a medal, we call these today a slave medal. It's an ID type of thing. And it hung on the neck of that person. And those two things enslaved that person. They did not get a birth certificate like we would. They got a bill of sale and a slave medal. Rice, indigo, and long staple cotton are the crops that shaped the area. Crops and slavery. That was a combination that made many of the Tidewater plantations possible. And there were times when slaves were the crop. These are the great live oak trees leading into this plantation, which is called Boone Hall. Charleston was a divided city during the Revolutionary War. Next-door neighbors might have had their sympathies in two entirely different camps, the colonist rebel and the British Tory. The British tried 3 times to take Charleston. Fort Moultrie, and that's where the picture is being taken from, called Fort Sullivan at that time, was the major defense in the 1776 attempt in which British naval and land forces were defeated. Finally, however, in 1780, the British lined the west bank of the Ashley River with guns, put a line across the peninsula, and brought ships into the Cooper River. Now, I'm going to break in at that point. I'm still at Fort Moultrie, and this is Fort Sumter out in the harbor. The ship channel is between these two forts. At about the same time, they, that's the British, had taken the upper reaches of the Cooper River, the only remaining source of supply. That is up beyond the bridges, because nothing was there at the time. Charleston fell after a 2-month siege and was under British control for 2 years. Before that siege, an accident occurred within the city. Francis Marion, that's the statue you're looking at, fell and broke an ankle. At the time of the surrender of the city, he was on the outside. He put together a ragtag group, and in parentheses I have the word army with a question mark, and operated out of the low country swamps like this. Marion and his men were an unconventional group with tactics that confounded the British. Hit the British, especially supply lines, take what you can, and disappear into the swamps. It was a British officer, a hated one named Tarleton, later defeated the Cowpens, who probably gave Francis Marion the name of Swamp Fox. This whole area, including Charleston, and indeed the whole nation, owe a debt to Marion and his men which can never be paid. And yet, in Marion Square that you're looking at, with the old citadel in the background, in the city of Charleston, no statue is found of Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox. The statue that I showed you, I took the picture in the little town of Marion, South Carolina. That shell bursting in the air to signify the start of the Civil War was preceded by an earlier shot on the Star of the West, a Union supply ship. This earlier shot was fired on January the 9th, 1861, from Cummings Point, and that's where I'm standing taking this picture, on the end of Morris Island by Citadel cadets. Many Southern people consider that firing as a true start of the war. And that is Fort Sumter in the background, but they were not firing on Fort Sumter, they were firing on a supply ship. And this is the famous sea oats that you see in the foreground of the picture. Now we'll be going into the low country area first, but let's look at a few low country views and a dozen or so city of Charleston views to whet your appetite. And I am doing separation of subjects usually with camellia flowers as we go through here. And this is Camellia sasanqua. That's a very delicate camellia. That's not the one that you pick to have ladies put in their hair or anything. This one is much too fragile for that. Before I get too far along, Charleston's population is only about 70,000. But get this, the altitude is only 13 feet. And Charleston was the capital until 1790. So these are to whet your appetite, and we'll be coming back to these places. This is the hostess at Boone Hall Plantation. And I just love these country roads, especially where live oaks are involved, where the branches touch across the top. You can find them out here in Ohio, and I ride on them anytime I can. We'll be looking at a place called Bird Key, and that's the open Atlantic out behind there. These are pelicans and laughing gulls in the foreground. You'll see some reminders of the Civil War, monuments to Civil War heroes and the like. I'm standing now on old Fort Sumter. Then the gardens. This is Middleton Place on the Ashley. And because you won't see this particular picture when we come back, these are called the Butterfly Lakes, and that is the Ashley River. It's flowing away from us. The Ashley at this point is at best brackish, but it's probably more salt than it is brackish. And this is one of the downtown churches. This is the French Huguenot Church on Church Street, of all places. And we will be looking into this home. We'll actually go into this one. This is the Nathaniel Russell home. And I'll just show you one picture inside right now. And then this is the College of Charleston. This is the oldest municipal college in the country. And from up in the tower of a church, just a view across, and you can see the bridges over the Cooper River. And you might have actually heard of Rainbow Row in Charleston. It's on East Bay. This is St. Philip's Church. And just on the edge of the picture, you may or may not be able to see a couple of spires, and that's that French Huguenot Church, which you've already seen. This is the old Dock Street Theater. This goes back quite a ways. I don't think it has any record as far as oldest or anything like that, but it goes back a ways. And this is the famous St. Michael's. And this is a friend of mine named Brooks. Henry Ladson is his real name. And Brooks has died since I took this picture. But I've worked in the fields with Brooks. And I wanted to show you, I used him to introduce these next couple of pictures because these are still slave quarters on one of the old plantations on James Island, just outside of Charleston. And here is another view. Now we will see some more slave quarters when we visit Boone Hall Plantation. But first we're going out over onto John's Island. This is south of the city to see the famous Angel Oak. This is the largest sprawling live oak that I've ever seen. And all the gray hanging down is Spanish moss. A beautiful combination. Spanish moss, incidentally, of all things, is a member of the pineapple family. And then in another part of the low country, but up towards Monk's Corner, was a famous battle of Eutaw Springs. The reason it got so famous is Philip Freneau wrote a poem about it. But unfortunately, that's a plaque that you can see there, what they think it looked like. But unfortunately, this is about all you see of that place in this little park, because the battlefield, and I understand the graves, are beneath the Santee Cooper Water Project out in there somewhere. Then this one you probably haven't heard about, but eons ago, I'll just use that as a measure of time, there was a tremendous meteorite shower that hit North and South Carolina, and it formed a lot of what are called bays, or Carolina bays. So you have things like this that were actually carved out that night that these meteors hit. This was before, I suppose Indians were living here, but it was before any settlement from Europe came into this country. And all kinds of bays, so you get all kinds of swampy areas. This is just filled with lilies here, and you get the bulls, cypress, and everything. And this is Wood Bay State Park, a state park of California. What I want to say, South Carolina is what I'm trying to say, my own state. And this lily is a close-up taking in that bay. Now, before I get too far along, I'll let my wife show you a Methodiana rubra camellia, and I'll tell just one gullah story. Now, the gullah stories are about the black people along the Carolina seacoast. A lot of the words like church becomes chutch. The redbird, the cardinal becomes cardinal. And that is an influence of Scottish and English slave overseers when we were back in that time. And that carries forth into the present day, at least among the older people, as a dialect called Gullah. Well, the only one I'm going to tell you about is this gentleman from the north. They wouldn't say north, they would say north. Was lost on his way to the post office in the lower part of Charleston. And the only person he saw around was this old black man, was sort of inebriated, you might say. So he goes over and taps him on the shoulder and he says, "Sir, could you direct me to the post office?" And he sits up and he says, well, so boss, you go down here to Linwood Street. No, that ain't right. You go over here to Trad Street and you turn. No, that ain't right. You go down here to Meeting Street and you, boss, you can't get there from here. Now notice that I didn't say here. He said, here. I've never heard one of these people use the term here. It's always here. And you get all of these kind of things in the Gullah dialect. Well, so much for the Gullah dialect. I've gotten you over now to Middleton Place on the Ashley. This is one of the famous, probably the most famous, of the gardens down in the Charleston area. It's on the west bank of the Ashley River. It was begun in 1741, and Henry Middleton, who was president of the First Continental Congress, was the one that did it. I say Henry did it, with 100 slaves working for 10 years to make this garden that you see. Now, you've already seen that bend of the Ashley with the butterfly lakes. They are behind me now, and we're looking out. And these will all be scenes around Middleton Place on the Ashley. Now, this and this are fresh water, and right in here is fresh water, and that is rice. We would call it a rice paddy. I'm not sure what they call it, and this is the Ashley River on out here. But rice, remember I said rice and indigo and long staple cotton. This is an azalea here. You've been seeing mostly camellias so far. And this is the house there at Middleton Place. Now the gardens are not in full bloom at this time. I'm too late for it. I'm in May, and all the azaleas have mostly bloomed. Different other plants are coming along, and I did back in the dark areas. I got a few azaleas when I was down there. And if you want to see black water or a black pond, go to a cypress swamp, and that's where you will see them the blackest. This is live oak hanging over the water. And this is the Ashley River itself. That will be salt, or maybe a little brackish, maybe a little bit of fresh in it. That particular year, they'd had a hard time with the lawns. Already in May, they were getting brown. Now this is a butterfly lake, and this is the rice here, and on out beyond there is the Ashley River. This is a great blue heron. We'll see that guy closer like that. Now here in Summit County, if you really want to see these, in the month of May, go up along Bath Road, and you will see them between Akron Peninsula and Riverview. They're nesting. It's a good rookery there. Look very close here. It's a dark picture, but that is a peacock. If you had a plantation, you no doubt would have some peacocks and you would have guinea hens, and then you didn't even need a watchdog. These things make so much squawking that they take the part of a dog. And then, as I said, we were going to separate by camellias. I won't know all the names of these camellias. I don't know that one. And I showed you and told you about the knitting of the branches across the roads, which is really nice there. Now we're going to look at the Atlantic Ocean a little bit. And the new Charleston lighthouse has no character at all. I'll show it to you after a while, but this is the one that I always photograph. It's not in use anymore, but it stands out in the Atlantic. And along the foam and all coming along there. A great salt marsh. And that reminds me that I want to read you something from Rachel Carson. She's the one that wrote about the oceans, and she's the one that wrote about Silent Spring. To stand at the edge of the sea, to sense the ebb and the flow of the tides, to feel the breath of a mist moving over a great salt marsh, to watch the flight of the shorebirds that have swept up and down the surf lines of the continent for untold thousands of years, to see the running of the old eel and the young shad to the sea, is to have knowledge of things that are as nearly eternal as any earthly life can be. These things were before ever man stood on the shore of the ocean and looked out upon it with wonder. They continue year in, year out, through the centuries and the ages, while man's kingdoms rise and fall. And this is the yucca. Down there we would call that a Spanish bayonet. These are red knots. The month is May, and they are migrating north. And some more of the great salt marshes, and as I said, this is the great place to get creek shrimp, which are the tastiest of the shrimp. And if you like oysters, remember they come from stuff like this, in the mud. Now, the human race tries to baffle Mother Nature, and they build these are called groins, out into the ocean, trying to stabilize the sand in between. But something like Hurricane Hugo hits and all that's gone. And these are palmettos. And incidentally, this is the open Atlantic that you're looking at the beach. This is on that Morris Island. This one is Methodiana rubra. I remember that one. Still a Camellia japonica. And then an old picture. I don't know if these ships are used anymore. These used to go out and tend the buoys, B-U-O-Ys, out at sea that would direct the ships in through the proper place for the ship channel. Very colorful picture still. These are shrimp trawlers, and they'll be going out and dropping nets down and so forth. A lot of boats around. Now that place and this place got devastated by Hurricane Hugo, but the last time I saw them, they were more or less as full as they ever were. Lots of marinas around the area. And this is a boat my brother had long years ago. Then there's a lot of this going on, sailboat races, regattas, just sailing for the heck of it. This one is called Alba Plena. And we're going into another garden. We're going into cypress gardens. This is one where you can use the footpaths, or you can go in a boat. You can hire somebody, they have people there to take you, and you're expected to pay them. Or you can get one of the boats yourself and go. Notice these kind of trees like this with that kind of buttress. Those are cypress trees. Well, this is a cypress also. And on the footpaths, there are a lot of azaleas. Well, you can see the azaleas from the boat as well as from the footpath. I would recommend going both ways, frankly. There, you can see a footpath going back along and through there. They said they had a couple of alligators in here, but we never saw them. Now, they're not sure yet, at least the last time I read, they're not sure, but these are called cypress knees, and they think it might have something to do with getting air down to the roots of the plant, of the tree. This one's called Hermie. And that's a good way not to treat marshland. Don't put buildings on marshland, and I don't know, I never did hear about this particular building in Hurricane Hugo, but it had to get into the first floor of it and destroy everything, I'm sure. And this place, which is on the peninsula, which contains the historic Charleston, this used to be some of the most productive marshland around. See, you need marshland for shrimp and all the shellfish. They need that as part of their life cycle. And they don't understand that, and they covered this with a landfill. So you're walking over old landfill that destroyed a productive place. That house over there must have taken a hit in Hurricane Hugo also, because this is a great marsh right in front of it. Now we've gone to Boone Hall, and you saw a picture similar to this before. The young lady told us that yes, Boone Hall was in Gone with the Wind, about 5 or 6 of the oak trees, but nothing else. But they put it in their advertising brochure. She said, if you want to see Boone Hall in a movie, look at, I think she said, the blue and the gray. But this is an old plantation house, Boone Hall. They still raise pecans there, and that was one of the crops that they were raising when they had slaves there. And here's the young lady that took us through the house. Actually, you can't go on above the first floor, and there's not a whole lot to see, but she can answer a lot of questions. There's the family that owns it lives on the second floor. So you don't really stay in the house all that long, just gives you an opportunity to see what it's like. So you can see the stairway is blocked off. But back out in front of the house and off to the side are these buildings. These are brick, but they are slave quarters. These are the slave quarters for the artisans and for the slaves that work in the house. But look at what they're like inside. Dirt floors, a little old fireplace, that's it. Now, all of the houses that were used to house the field slaves have all been destroyed. They were not brick. This is a smokehouse that looks like it ought to be worked over. It's going to be ruined. And then if you're in the Charleston area, you'll probably have seen some of the Gullah people, women, I think almost sorely, making baskets and various things out of sweetgrass. Very good workmanship, very, very neat things, but boy, have they put the prices up in the last few years. I should say in the last 15 years. Then, since I just took these pictures within the last couple of years, and it's a very dramatic view of a plantation house, I put them in here. This is Drayton Hall. This is on the west bank of the Ashley River, and Boone Hall was on the eastern side of the Cooper River. But this is a house, it has no furniture in it. And they do not intend, the last I heard, they do not intend to put furniture in it. But when Jackie Onasa was still alive, she came to this house. She was very interested in it. And they were working on the second floor, and so at that time you couldn't go to the second floor. And she told the man, "What do I have to do to get to the second floor?" And he says, "Well, okay." And he moved stuff around and took Jackie up to the second floor. He said she was a little dirty by the time we got down, but she seemed to like it. This is the part that faces out towards the water. Drayton Hall. And this is a southern magnolia, a beautiful tree. Look at those, not only the flower, but look at the leaves as well. And then later it opens out and becomes this. Southern magnolia, it's an evergreen. And I mentioned when we were looking at that little map about Patriots Point and the Cooper River. This is the carrier Yorktown. Now, one carrier Yorktown was sunk in World War II. This is the one that took its place. It is moored here permanently now, and you can go aboard. You pay a fee, and you can go to onto the Yorktown and several other ships that are there. The Yorktown is the only one that I have been on. But as you're walking up there, if you look up past the bow, that you can see the Cooper River bridges from you. And I'm on the flight deck now, looking. And there are a couple of the other ships that you can go aboard. These bridges, especially when it was only the one bridge, the one on the left, they used to terrify people, and they would go miles out of the way to come into Charleston by a different route so they wouldn't have to go over that. There is an old picture when there was only one bridge, and the traffic was both ways over that one bridge, and that's when people were really afraid of it. Over in the other river, the Ashley River, that is the bridge. And I used that bridge many more times than I used the Cooper River because we used it to get home. I'm standing on that landfill that I told you about a few minutes ago. And if you want something that is really fragrant, a real great aroma, yellow jessamine. That's a neat, it's a vine, and it really is neat. We're going to look at Bird Key now, and these are all pelicans. I say all pelicans. These guys in the foreground with the black heads, these are laughing gulls. And if you walk close up, you actually stay out and on the beach and walk around. But if you walk up towards there where these laughing gulls are nesting, they will fly up over your head, maybe about 10 feet high, and they will really tell you off in no uncertain terms. But up in the sky, if you look at a bird that on the ground looks so awkward, but in the air is a real master, and that's the brown pelican. This is probably the second largest brown pelican rookery on the Atlantic seaboard. It's a great one. Rather ungainly looking bird. And back over here is the open Atlantic. So this doesn't have much protection, and the bird in the foreground is just about ready to get back down on top of the egg. Over in another part of Bird Key is a whole carpet of royal terns. And in the background there is this island over here. That's James Island. That's where I was born and raised till I went into service. Now, this will not all come into focus, but you get a good idea of some of the variety of camellias. Now we're going to go around Charleston Harbor a little bit. This is old Fort Johnson, and as I said, it was a battery of Fort Johnson that fired the first shot of the Civil War. And here's Fort Sumter. We'll go ashore there, what's left of Fort Sumter. Some of the gun emplacements still there. Now the city is off to the right of the picture in the background. And when I mentioned Cummings Point, the Citadel cadets were firing on the Star of the West. They were firing from that point. That is Cummings Point, the end of Morris Island. Inside the fort, a little model of how it looked when firing first took place. Now you can see in the distance the bridges over the Cooper River and a little bit of Charleston. And then we were about ready to get back on the boat and go around some more. But Fort Sumter, because of what happened there, was an important place. And over to old Fort Moultrie, which was Fort Sullivan during the Revolution. And Chief Osceola of the Seminole Indians of Florida was in this fort at the time he died, and so he is buried right here. I don't know if he was being held prisoner or what the story was. I never have really heard. And from Fort Moultrie, there off with the flag raised, is Fort Sumter. Now we're going to go around and take a little look at the city from the harbor. That's the old Fort Sumter Hotel. It's not a hotel anymore, but I think it's apartments or something of that nature. And this is White Point Garden here, and we'll look at that closer, and we're going to look at this Hobson Memorial here also. We're looking at the historic part of Charleston. This is St. Michael's, this is St. Philip's. And this is old Fort Johnson again. And right in through here is where we used to swim when it was I guess it was a custom point, and they would have a tug that would go out especially to banana boats, and they examine them to be sure that nothing was being brought in that wasn't supposed to come in. And that is the lighthouse that works today, and you can see why I said it had no character at all, and everybody likes the other lighthouse better. This is a little place, used to have some buildings on it, Castle Pinckney in the Cooper River, and that is that boat in the background is part of the display where the aircraft carrier is at Patriots Point. St. Michael's again. And now we're looking at Charleston from over on James Island. This is one of the gardens that back when I lived down here, I helped design and help plant. This is where my father and the family had a nursery on James Island. And this is what a growing camellia plant looks like. And the reason for this particular one is that it's one of my favorites. And would you guess, Pink Perfection is its name. And that is rainwater that is on it. I was taking pictures when it was very wet. Now, we have finally moved into the city of Charleston, and these are the famous sod gates. The last I heard, you weren't allowed in this garden, but I stuck the camera through and took a picture of it. And then along South Battery. South Battery goes this way, down this way, and this is the view on High Battery. So if you were in this building and it was there during the Civil War, from that top floor you would get a view of the bombardment of Fort Sumter. And then on South Battery, this is called the Gibbs House, a Georgian style, and many of the camellia pictures that you are seeing were taken in the gardens of this house. And now this is no, I don't know whose house this is, but I just wanted to show that they were not tearing down things now. They renovate and restore and use those kind of words instead of bulldozing the whole thing down. And I'm really happy to see that. This is the Villa Margarita. This is where they, I don't know if they still do, but they used to hold the debutante balls here in the Villa Margarita on South Battery. And that's one of the ways that you can get around town if you're so inclined. Some of the old stately homes there on High Battery. And then we looked at Rainbow Row before, but here will be a couple more views of Rainbow Row. This one, I think the restoration has been done. This is the Manigault house, and I think you now can go in it, but not when I was last there. The one we're going into to see first, we're going into a couple, but we're going to look at the Calhoun Mansion first. But this is a view along South Battery first, and now we'll go to the Calhoun Mansion. That's the outside, and you people who are listening to me probably call those porches, but we of the South call those piazzas, and that's what they're known as down there. Those would be piazzas. Just a few slides inside, probably more in this one than the others. Just to show you what some of the stuff is like. Somebody still lives here. But it is open. I think this one is open all year long for certain hours. Please don't ask me what it is. I'm not sure. I just thought it was ornate and very pretty. It's about, as I recall, 3.5 to 4 feet high, I think. An interesting piece. And then up on the top floor is this. And here's the outside. There are those piazzas up towards the front that you saw from the other angle. But this is the grounds of the Calhoun Mansion. Now we've moved over and we're going to go into the Nathaniel Russell home. This is the one that has the floating stairway. There it is, as a matter of fact. It doesn't seem to have a visible means of support, but it nevertheless works. I think the lady thought I was nuts. I practically laid down to take this picture under it. Notice the hop here. I've seen hops in several of the homes down in Charleston. Now, I don't know if I am projecting that picture right. It's ornate ceiling work or corner work of the ceiling. Part of its wall, part of its ceiling, so take your pick. And here's some more of that staircase. Little cradle there. And this is the Nathaniel Russell home. And there's the sweep from above of that staircase. You saw a picture similar to this before. Outside in the garden. That one is Methodiana rubra. Now, I had a brother who died a number of years ago over in Washington. He was an artist, among other things, and he did beautiful pen and ink work. And these are from some engraving plates that he had made of some of his work. So I'll show you his work in pen and ink, and then the on-site picture of what's depicted. Here's that, I'll show you the Huguenot Church again in a moment, but here's the Huguenot Church. This is Church Street. These trees here are the palmettos, and that is St. Philip's in the background. Now, he did one of the porticos of St. Philip's, and I think it is this one that he was depicting. Today, when I took the picture, it had no vines or anything on it, but that should be the south portico, if I'm not mistaken. And then he just loved St. Michael's. Of course, you hear about St. Michael's an awful lot down in the Charleston area. It's sort of a landmark. And then the French Huguenot Church. I didn't have his drawings with me when I was taking these pictures. I didn't always take from the same angle that he did his work. You'll see that right with the Scotch Presbyterian Church here, because he took it from that angle, I took it from the other angle. And I got back to Ohio, and that's the way it was. And then, as far as I know, he never did draw this church, which is unusual because this was our grandmother's church, Grace Episcopal, which is a towering thing. And then, since I'm congregational, I have to show the circular church or the congregational church there in Charleston. And then back when I was working at my father's nursery there, we had the job of doing the cleaning and the cutting of grass and all that stuff in this cemetery. That's some of the gate work there, fine gate work. And then here's part of the cemetery. Now, my father would be out looking at the gravestones. He had this thing about reading the stuff on gravestones that he liked to do. Now, a few of the buildings around town, and this is another one of those things where you have to have a wide-angle lens because there's so many wires running around. If you can't get in closer, you're going to get all those wires in your picture. This is the Custom House. I think it's still in use. I wouldn't actually swear to it. And this is the old Dock Street Theater there in Charleston. And that's it again on another trip. And then down over in this building and at the street level is the old marketplace. Now, there were several catastrophes that befell Charleston that I'll mention towards the very end, but one of them, and I think the year was 1938, although it might have been 39, tornadoes. 3 tornadoes hit Charleston, the city of Charleston, in a one September day, and 2 more hit other parts of the county. And in here, a lot of the black people from the low country had brought in their produce to sell it, and a lot of them were killed right back in here where you can walk today and buy all kinds of things. This is the old Provo building, the old Exchange. Actually, I think they call it the old Exchange and the Provo Dungeon. And in the basement of that building, 3 signers of the American Declaration of Independence were imprisoned by the British with not the greatest of care either. Old Charleston names like Pinckney, Rutledge, Hayworth, and Middleton. And 3 of those, and I think Rutledge is the one that you would leave out, were imprisoned there. Now, on this corner, this is said to be the corner of 4 levels of governing. Now, you've already seen St. Michael's. That's supposed to be the governing of God. You're looking at the U.S. Post Office, and I move in on some of the ladies selling flowers and things. So that's the U.S. And over on this corner is the County of Charleston government building. And over on this corner is the Charleston City Hall. Its flags announce the Spoleto Festival. Now, we're going in this one because of something kind of neat. Trumbull did portraits of George Washington, and the city fathers way back then had him do a portrait of Washington for the City Hall. Then they didn't want to pay him. Now, this is the story as I got it. He took the painting back, turned the horse around, so you see the rear end of the horse, and brought it back and then left town. And so there it is today, and they tell that story when they're showing it to you. Something pretty new in the city, not everything is old. This is the Omni Hotel. And going inside of it, it's kind of luxurious. And then the old Fort Sumter Hotel. Now, this is an old picture taken back in the late 50s, because these tour boats no longer dock there. They dock over in the Ashley River to take you on that tour out to Fort Sumter and around the harbor. But the Fort Sumter Hotel is no longer a hotel, as I said before, and I think it's in apartments, if I'm not mistaken. But I mentioned that I wanted to show you that this particular memorial to the USS Hobson. The Hobson, I think it was a destroyer. It collided with the USS Wasp, which was an aircraft carrier, on April the 26th, 1952, off of Charleston, and 176 men died in that collision. Here's that other way to get around Charleston. We're out at the White Pond Garden, and that memorial is at the end of the garden, the end closest to that Fort Sumter Hotel. This is White Point. And this is the Broad Street side of it. No, I'm sorry, not Broad Street. That's South Battery side of it. And along here you see a Confederate memorial in the White Point Gardens for the defense of, for the actual bombing of Fort Sumter, firing on Fort Sumter. If you look right through the middle, you can see the aircraft carrier Yorktown over there at Patriots Point. Now this is Broad Street. This is Broad Street looking, in that building at the other end is that the Exchange and Provo Dungeon building. And this is what we call High Battery. And the land across the way over there is James Island. This is Chalmers Street. And they really ruined its character. They had to dig it up for something, and when they put it back together, they did it like this, and it had been huge cobblestones. I mean, it was really rough. It's a little rough now, but it was really rough before. You didn't go many miles an hour over that. And then here's something that you might have heard about. This is Do As You Choose Alley. This is, goes back to the old Porgy and Bess. Actually, it was Pearlstein Alley. Back in here was Porgy and his little goat cart. Du Bois Haywood's novel called this Cabbage Row. But it was really, I guess it was Cabbage Row. He called it Catfish Row. But Porgy himself is buried over on James Island, very close to the Presbyterian Church over there. And this is his grave. And yes, there was a Porgy, and yes, he did have a goat cart. Now, a little bit about Hampton Park. Hampton Park has lost some of its character because they were having a drug problem, and they had to go in and remove some of the beds, which were hiding places and so forth. And so it lost some of its stuff. It's not bad, but it was better. And then you can't get away. I said my name was John Rodgers, and my great-grandfather built this house. It's now owned by the Atlantic Coast Life. My father lived in it for some time, and this man is head of Atlantic Coast Life, and but if the name Rodgers is mentioned, he'll actually take you under his wing and take you through the house. They're really proud of it, and we got to go through it. So this one is not on the tourist route, but it is one of the beautiful old homes of Charleston. And this is the back of it. The cupola there was a place where my grandfather could observe the whole city, and he was the one that set up the fire department for the city, and he would spot fires from there and pass the word along. And then one of my brothers arranged for me to go up in the Second Presbyterian Church with the minister, and I took these pictures from the roof side of that, just so I could get to a high point in the city and take a few pictures around, just so that you could see that it stretched out. See, the place is so level, you really don't get any hills or anything, and as I said, the elevation is only 12 feet, so you aren't going to get much from that. But you get to see the rooftops and some of the church spires as you go around. And this was the church, and we were up in the top of it on, there's an opening in one of those roofs, at least you can open it, and I got up there to take those pictures. That's the Second Presbyterian Church at Rag Square. Now we're going into the Edmonston-Alston home. This will be the last of the homes that we go in. This one is sort of coupled with the Nathaniel Russell home. You can buy a ticket that permits you to go through both of them. That picture will not come into focus, but I hated to leave it out. A lot of knicky-knacks. Another one of the harps. Now the view out through there is over towards Fort Sumter. Then if you go out on the little porch area at the first floor, you find this jogging board. And you can bunks pretty good on that. That board really has to be something, but that's a favorite down in that area, or at least it used to be a favorite, a jogging board. A little bit of the garden there. And I guess that's the front. It also has piazzas, which we didn't really look at. This is wisteria with azaleas. And this statue took a hit sometime. I never have found out when, but it's a statue to William Pitt, who was so favorable towards the colonists. And this is where John Rutledge is buried. Now, he was involved with the Congress, but not with the Declaration. The Continental Congress, that is. And Colonial Lake. Colonial Lake is a true lake. I guess you would call it a true lake, but it's salt water. It's tidal. I got it at pretty good high tide. But it's a favorite spot for people to walk around and sit in the afternoon and so forth. And there's another camellia as we move over, and just take a quick look at the Citadel. The Citadel is a military college. You've heard it in the news a number of times in the last few years, because up until now it has been all male students. I'm not sure what the status is right at the moment. This is the parade grounds looking over there. And then my brother did a pen and ink of the chapel at the Citadel, and this is it. That's the only picture I have of it, so you have to put up with the light spot there, the sunspot. And the College of Charleston. This is one of my sisters graduated from here, and as I mentioned, this is the oldest municipal college in the country. Now, he wasn't doing this one. He was doing this part back in here. But it has expanded, and it's all along here. This is still the College of Charleston. I'm going to show you a few azaleas here. I haven't shown you too many azaleas, mostly camellias. Camellias bloom in late fall, winter, and early spring, and azaleas bloom in early spring. And then I have a special closing that I wrote for this that we get to as soon as we get through the azaleas. And I go outside of the city to get the statue of Francis Marion again, and I call it Charleston, City of Memories. Still azaleas. And then that one you saw before, and then we ought to see Francis Marion. Conceived of British royalty, born of rice, indigo, cotton, and slavery, tried in the American Revolution, captured by the British, led the South into the great American tragedy, started in your own harbor, lived through the long, dark night of Reconstruction, Charleston, city of history. Your harbor has sheltered all manner of craft, from sailing ship to atomic submarine. Your streets have known all manner of vehicle, from Porgy's goat cart to the most modern motor car. Your sidewalks have felt the tread of many different people, from slave to the President of the United States. All manner of sound has passed over you, from the roar of the cannon to the sublime tones of the bells of St. Michael's. What new experiences lie ahead? Charleston, city of destiny. Lanes of live oak, draped with Spanish moss, leading to plantation homes. Sandy beaches where the mighty Atlantic Ocean drives in with rolling surf. Small country roads where the treetops meet overhead. The smell of salt marshes at low tide, an aroma that gets in your blood. Gardens known to the world, Magnolia, Middleton Place, and Cypress. The sea islands, the inland waterway, the palmettos, and much more. How gloriously does the low country complement you, Charleston, city of beauty. Now, before I go into the next part, I mentioned this before, and this slide shows it. This is an atomic submarine, and it is going up. It will go up the Cooper River into the Wando for outfitting with Polaris missiles. Cannon fire has hit you. Earthquake, tornado, hurricane, and polio have been unleashed on you, but always you have picked up the pieces and turned again to the future. Charleston, the invincible city. Camellias blooming in winter when all other flowers are gone. Azaleas bringing spring with a splash, and sometimes a bit too early. Wisterias combining with azaleas for an extra bit of glory. Jasmine sending forth an aroma for the gods. Gardenias filling a room with their scent, only to fade far too quickly. Oleander holding their fragrance until you are upon them. Crepe myrtle providing continuing beauty after the days have turned warm. How the plant kingdom has lavished its beauty on you, Charleston, city of flowers. Small streets with live oaks hung with Spanish moss. Secluded gardens behind walls with wrought iron gates. Large and elegant houses of southern aristocracy. Piazzas that run the length of the house. Beautiful and historic churches, Charleston, city of elegance. Swimming in your surf, sailing in your harbor, boating in your sounds and inlets, fishing in all sorts of places, attending activities of your Spalletta Festival, walking in your historic section, eating your food of the sea, shrimp, crab, oyster, fish. Watching your Gullah people weaving baskets and trying to understand them as they sell their wares. Charleston, city of variety. Known to your own as the holy city. Known to your visitors as a city of charm. Magnet for tourists, simply to experience your charm and hospitality and touch once more a little of the past. Charleston, city of memories.